Kia ora. Welcome. Haere mai. Big it up to yourself. Big it up to us. Big it up to Aotearoa Sport. And that's what we are here today for. Celebration, honoring, documentation of Aotearoa sporting excellence for another episode of the Niche Cast. That's what we do on a weekly basis here on Thursday midday-ish. We are here to talk about Kiwi sports. A couple of topics on the menu today. We got the city kickboxing happenings. We got some Blackcaps. I got that twisted. Let me start again. Bang, bang, bang. We are starting again. Cool. 3, 2, 1. Bing! Kia ora. Big it up to yourself. Big it up to us. We are here on a Thursday morning, which we are here on a weekly basis, chatting through, honoring, discussing, analyzing, yarning about Kiwi sport from the land of Aotearoa. Today we got some city kickboxing, got some football ferns, got some Plunket Shield, busy times on the Niche Case Sports Beat. We have done a big old Blackcaps T20 World Cup preview on our Patreon page as well. So if you're a Patreon member of the Patreon whānau, make sure you check that out. And if you're in search of a way to support the Niche Case, if you like what we're doing and you want to be part of the movement, part of the whānau, join the Patreon whānau. You support us straight up the guts. You get a karma boost and you get extra content as well. Patreon.com/El Niche Case, EL Niche Case. Trust that link is in the description box, as well as our email banger Mondays and Fridays. We deliver the Niche Case straight to your email inbox. The nichecase.substack.com is where you can whack in your email address and you get the Niche Case as well as some extra yarns straight into your email on a Monday and Friday evening. Otherwise, we're always writing about Kiwi sports at the niche-case.com. Wobbly Wildcard, can you please start the show with... It's a bit of a Halloween pillowcase lolly scramble combination here, and I just had to clarify in case anyone was wondering what I mean by a pillowcase full of mindfulness. Because where you get the pillowcase, you put all the lollies in the pillowcase.
Right.
For Halloween. So I'm coming to you, trick or treat. Can you put some mindfulness in my pillowcase?
Right. Mindfulness for the pillowcase. I thought you were going to go with when you see the Halloween thing, I thought you were going to go with a pumpkin head of like a carved pumpkin face of mindfulness or something. This is from Mr. John Burrows, I think, because I found the quote independent of him and then I had to look up who said it, and then it was attributed to a couple different people, but John Burrows seems to be the most popular one, who says, quote, "Leap and the net will appear."
But a trust in the old universe to trust that net will appear after you make the move. You got to direct your energy, focus your energy on a movement, and then the net will appear.
Leap of faith. Pretty self-explanatory there, but also, I guess, I don't know, trusting in your visions, trusting in your instincts, those kind of things as well. As you extend that many places.
What are your instincts and visions and intuition about the Blackcaps T20 World Cup campaign? Now that we're a couple of days closer, we've got some warm-up games played. I'm just curious and touching base with you just how you're feeling about the intuitive vibes about this Blackcaps T20 World Cup.
Well, my intuitions about the team was that I just wasn't really sure. So it's good timing that you asked that, because I've just been working, I just finished the draft of an article trying to figure out, I think I'm just going to title it something along the lines of, are the Blackcaps, how good are the Blackcaps at 2020 cricket? Because what I wanted to figure out was, is there a way of telling, of working out what the expectation should be ahead of a World T20? And I was trying to figure out, what are the aspects of 2020 cricket specifically that I think are important, and are the Blackcaps good at it? One of the ideas I had was I figured the being able to hit well in the power play, the first 6 overs, because 2020 is obviously a boundary dominated sport, more than any of the other formats. The team that hits the most boundaries generally wins the game, because boundaries are where the bulk of your runs come from. You get fewer twos, fewer threes, well, hardly any threes, because you're hitting the ball so hard. Things like that. Therefore, I figured power plays, fielders up, that's your best opportunity to hit boundaries. However, then the first case study I looked at was the IPL to try to see what it was like in the conditions similar to what they're going to be playing at. And first of all, I think it was 10 out of the top 11 team innings at the last IPL were from before the break, before the COVID hiatus. So after teams came back and the wickets had been relayed a little bit in the UAE, scores were considerably lower. So that's a factor. And I think that probably plays into the fact that who was it who won? It was Chennai, wasn't it? Won the whole thing. That they actually weren't even in the top half of the best teams for scoring runs in the first 6 overs. What they were the best at is preserving wickets in the first 6 overs. And then I just looked at the final scorecard and they were 50 without loss or something after 6 overs. Their last 4 overs, however, they scored 53 for 1 or something. So clearly a higher strike rate at the end. So I think keeping that in mind, I think that's the main thing I learned from that. Unfortunately, trying to compare it to Blackcap stuff is just impossible because the Blackcaps don't play enough cricket, haven't played hard, 2/3 of their cricket over the last couple of years have all been at home, which are not conditions that really relate. It's only really in the last couple of years as well that they've had a squad that's going to look something like what we see at the World T20. So it's hard to figure out that context. But I did at least get an idea of that one thing. I think probably the idea of keeping wickets in hand and being able to blast off at the end matters more. Not so much if scores are 180 plus, then obviously you've got to be able to go from ball one. If scores are more 160 range, then don't lose wickets early on. Make sure you can consolidate the middle overs, score at a good, at least a run a ball against the spinners, and then absolutely blast off at the end. I don't know that the Blackcaps are well poised to do that first part. I think Guptill and Seifert are both going to be a little bit creaky at the top of the order. Hopefully not. Guptill had a nice innings overnight against England, I think. However, the middle order, Conway and Williamson, perfectly poised to be able to do exactly that. And then the idea of Glenn Phillips, Jimmy Neesham / Daryl Mitchell being able to hit blast off in the last, the last 4 overs specifically, if those two are in at that time. I like that. I like that from the Blackcaps. I think there's questions about the opening pair, but the rest of the batting lineup looks pretty good. All your bowlers who, any bowler who bats in 2020s is there for a good time, not a long time. I think all those Blackcaps guys are good at hitting from ball one. Sodhi can do it. Santner can definitely do it. Southey more than anyone can hit his first ball for 6. We know that. And Trent Boult can swing the bat. Lucky Ferguson a little bit less so, but he's a fast bowler. All fast bowlers can hit big 6s. And I think the bowling lineup is really good from the Blackcaps. I think a top shelf bowling lineup of the two spin, the spin kings, with Southey, Boult, and Ferguson. I think that's fantastic. Bit of pressure on those openers, but from that, I couldn't work out good ways of there just weren't enough stats to be able to explain this very well. But I think just looking at the basics of the first 11 Blackcaps team that they seem to be looking lining up, I think I came away with more confidence than I had starting in that they could be pretty good. That doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily do anything at this World T20s though, because they're going to have to beat either Pakistan or India, and who might be the two very best teams coming into this tournament, especially in these conditions. So I think I've come around to thinking this is quite a good 2020 team that they've got. They just will also need a little bit of luck along the way.
Righto. So you mentioned the split between the first stanza and the second stanza in the IPL. Trent Boult and Kyle Jamieson were much better with the ball in the first stanza. So that's kind of counterintuitive. You're saying the scores decreased, so you'd expect the bowlers to be better as the scores decrease, but my trends were Trent Boult and Kyle Jamieson were that they took less wickets in the second stanza, like relatively to the first stanza. Then we got Stephen Fleming, who was coach at Chennai, who won the whole IPL. He's with the Blackcaps as a coaching staff member, as an advisor, as a guru for the Blackcaps. And I am curious to see, because that parlays into the next thought I had, which was the openers. Because we got Fleming, and you basically outlined a clear T20 strategy devised by Fleming. We're going to preserve wickets in the first 6 overs, the first power play, and then we're going to smack it at the end. Given conditions, that's pretty genius. What's Fleming's input going to be on the Blackcaps lineup? And I say that because wildcard, we've had 2 different opening combinations in the warm-up games. Against Australia, we had Martin Guptill, Daryl Mitchell, Kane Williamson, Devon Conway. And then against England overnight, we had Martin Guptill, Seifert, Conway, Phillips. And Chapman came in at number 5. So there was no Williamson and no Daryl Mitchell. They dropped out of the top 5 for that first, for those 2 warm-up games. So Daryl Mitchell actually scored runs in his chance. Seifert didn't. I kind of want to see that Mitchell opening the batting. So if you go Guptill, Mitchell, basically that first batting lineup against Australia, really. Guptill, Mitchell, Williamson, Conway, Phillips, number 5, Jimmy Neesham, number 6. Like that to me, and Conway was wicketkeeper against Australia. To me, that feels pretty good. And I think Mitchell and Guptill are pretty well equipped to do that Chennai Fleming plan, maybe. Of just seeing out the first, couple of overs. They got through 4.6 overs before losing a wicket against Australia. And then the second game against England, Tim Seifert was out 2.5, the 5th delivery of the 3rd over. So just something to keep an eye on there, because we're still, trying to get our first 11 sorted. Glenn Phillips has almost bowled more overs than Todd Astle as well, wildcard. He's bowled 1 over and he took a wicket against England. Todd Astle has bowled 2 overs and he went for 11 against England. And he went for 9 against Australia. So it's a pretty funny one. Like Todd Astle just gets this over in a game, and both games he's kind of got tonks. So I think that's the Williamson skipper treatment of Todd Astle that we've come to appreciate. If you just quickly here as well, because shout out to this guy, Max Dowd, who is the leading run scorer in the whole World Cup so far. He's got a 71 and a 50. Now, 70 and a 50 in his first 2 games. He's got 120 runs all up, averages 60, lowest strike rate of 117. But he's there for that Blackcaps job of just sitting through, batting through. Big runs for the Kiwi Dutch opener, Max O'Dowd. Logan van Beek is also playing for the Dutch team as well. Hasn't done so much, but just wrap up those Blackcaps thoughts there, wildcard. Bouncing off those warm-up games, how do you like some of those combinations used? Any other thoughts of or ideas just to set the table for this Blackcaps stuff?
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't intrigued by the Guptill Mitchell possibility at the top of the order. Because I should specify, like, the whole thing about like seeing out the power play overs is not about like leaving and blocking. It's about hitting with just less risk. And you might get out anyway because there's the thing called good bowling that you also got to deal with. But yeah, it's like I'm just not going blockbusters.
But they both went for 150 strike rate in the Mitchell and Guptill.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and that's the thing. Like, it's you can still score quick runs without taking like crazy risks or whatever. And I just think Mitchell is a little bit, maybe a little bit. Guptill definitely we know can is quite good with that style of play. He likes to ease his way into his innings. But with knowing that he has certain shots that you pitch up just a shade outside off stump and he's lifting you over mid off for 6 and it's going a long way back. He has his boundary shots, but he's not gonna do anything crazy. Seifert is maybe a little bit looser in that way. I think where Mitchell is maybe just a little more technically reliable, if you know what I mean. Seifert has a bigger upside. I think Seifert's more likely to smash like 50 of 25 balls than Mitchell is. Not saying Mitchell can't do that, of course he can, but I think Seifert's a little bit more likely, but he's also more likely to get out in the first over, which is the problem. Having said that, it depends on whether they want Conway as a first choice wicketkeeper, and they've hinted that they don't, which means I think Seifert starts regardless. But yeah, I just thought, not gonna lie, I do like the idea of that. Top six as well, because as I say, I think their bowling lineup is really good. I think you got two spinners who complement each other really nicely in a lot of ways. A wrist spinner and a finger spinner. You got a guy who has a really high strike, a really good strike rate, which is a really low strike rate, and Sodhi, someone who has a really good RPO, and Santner. Both of them therefore take wickets, because both of those things are wicket taken. Strike rate is specifically related to how quickly you take wickets per ball, and RPOs lead to wickets, and in that way, they complement each other nicely, leading to each other taking wickets when they bowl in tandem. You got a lefty, a righty, one who can turn the ball quite a lot either way, one who can vary his flight and his speed and his line really nicely. So those two we know are gonna, and they've looked pretty sharp in these warm-up games as well. I think Sodhi just took 3 wickets overnight against England. We know they're good, but Lockie Ferguson is I think he's the X factor, because if he's coming in and taking wickets, especially early wickets, getting some of those best batsmen and opposition teams out before they've had a chance to pile on the runs, that's huge. And as much as Bolt wasn't as good after the comeback, and Jamieson I don't think is quite first 11. I think that's a different story with him. Ferguson didn't play before the hiatus, did he? But he came in afterwards, and he took wickets in every single game until the final, where he got absolutely tonked. But even still, I think I was looking at the things. He had of people who bowled, I think 30 plus overs, something along those lines. So as many overs as he did or more. He had the third best strike rate in the entire IPL. Those are crazy figures. I might have got that stat wrong, but I've written it down in the piece somewhere. So refer to the article when that comes out. He's the X factor who can chip away wickets. And then Bolt, we know, is tidy, and actually is him and Southey have the same thing about being able to the same thing as the spinners, where they offer variations that complement each other. We know this from Test cricket, from a decade of Test cricket experience. And Southey's record in 2020s in Asia is actually quite good. I was surprised to see that. I think he's someone who, because the decks aren't as quick, he's not a guy who's trying to bowl 145 Ks, so that's not such a problem for him. It actually kind of brings in his variations a little more. So I think their bowling lineup is really good. It's just a matter of whether their batsmen can lay on the runs at a quick enough strike rate, because I think the strike rate is the issue, rather than the wickets. Because I think the way they're lined up, they sort of have to preserve wickets, because they're probably going to be setting up a specific top 6. They're not going to be a team that can handle being 40 for 3 or anything like that. But can they do that at a quick enough strike rate in order to give their bowlers runs to work with, and vice versa when the bowling, when they're chasing a total that the bowlers have bowled to, can they keep the run rate up and execute a good chase? I don't know. I think that's more the question with the Blackcaps, and we'll see. That's in home games mostly. They're mostly home games that they've played recently. They have been a team that scores above the average run rate and concedes above the average run rate, but scores a lot more above in order to be more of a winning team. But we'll see. That's the thing. It's the big problem I had trying to write about it, is that the conditions are so different that it's kind of hard to know what stuff relates back and forth from what we see of this Blackcaps team in Aotearoa games and what we're going to see from them in the UAE.
Kyle Jamieson has bowled in both games, which might be a fantastic sign of his inclusion to the first 11. That is counted by, I think it's up to 6 consecutive T20 games in which he has conceded over 10 runs and over. 2 of them were in England, 2 of them were in the IPL, and then now we've got these 2 warm-up games, which is 3 different situations, 3 different countries, and it's kind of the Jamison pickle at the moment because he also conceded high 11s, I think, against Australia. I think it's 11.66 RPO against Australia earlier this year. So he's bowled in the first 2 warm-up games, which is a good sign, but he's kind of in this patch where he's just too expensive to beat out Ferguson. Like, you can't make a case for Jamison as selected ahead of Saudi, Bolt, and Ferguson to our collective mind, I think. So be interesting to see what happens there. City Kickboxing wildcard. Let's just, again, setting the scene here, because I think it was a pretty tough first half of the year. And like, again, any Kiwi sports team, whether it's the Warriors, whether it's City Kickboxing, Phoenix, Breakers, overseas exports, it's been a niggly almost 2 years. But City Kickboxing kind of made their way through 2020 with no dramas, even though think of all the drama City Kickboxing has endured more recently about moving to a USA. The whole conditions were the same throughout 2020. And they just got on with it. Like, they won fights. They rose their mana. They got closer aligned with the UFC as well, which I think is huge. Like, they are a team that is useful to the UFC as opposed to niggly or antagonizing the UFC, like getting in their mixer. But they got through 2020, and to start this year was a bit tougher. Also, including the boxing, Junior Fa lost his fight to Joseph Parker. Carlos Ulberg, the debutant, he lost. We've had Gina Fabian. She lost to Kayla Harrison. I think Shane Young had another loss. And Israel Adesanya lost to Jan Blachowicz, which wasn't too bad, but it was a loss as well. It's been a kind of tough period, I think, to start 2021, but it's got an upswing. It's got an uptick coming into the back end. We had Hemi Ahio winning last weekend, and it's a massive stocks up car pie for Dan Hooker. He won his fight regardless of the situation, and he's got it in as like a go-to guy for the UFC now. A lot of UFC fans are saying Dan Hooker's like a UFC fan favorite, which is an international, global, amazing thing for Dan Hooker. Massive fight coming up against Islam Makhachev, which just to set the scene, Islam Makhachev averages 3.3 takedowns. Dan Hooker averages 0.9. Dan Hooker averages 5 strikes landed per minute. Islam Makhachev averages 2.2. So it's basically Dan Hooker striker versus one of the best grapplers, wrestlers in the world. It's an amazing fight. Then we've got Brad Riddell fighting in December, as well as Calcutta, France. I say all that because wildcard, it's going to be a great end of year for City Kickboxing, I reckon. Hemi Ahio has got the boxing team back on track. Dan Hooker's sifted through all the bullshit. He's got busy. You're going to see the City Kickboxing MMA team, the UFC team. They're going to be far more, it's going to be smooth sailing. It's going to be far more efficient if they are based overseas, which is going to be beneficial in a couple of big fights coming up. Is there anything boxing-wise, maybe with Ahio or Junior Fa, lurking on the radar to finish this year? Because there are Adesanya doesn't have a fight yet. Gina Fabian apparently doesn't have a fight yet. Shout out to Mike Blood Diamond Martheta. He has a UFC contract, but he doesn't have a fight booked. I don't think Shane Young has a fight booked either. So there are MMA fighters, UFC fighters who don't have fights coming up. Is that the case with Junior Fa as well? Even Ahio, do Do you have like a hunch of what his next activity will be?
Yeah, I don't think we'll see him and Yahio fighting again before the end of the year. That's like 2 months is just too short of a turnaround in boxing, even though it was only, you know, it was a second round TKO basically. So like he could physically he could, you know, maybe he'll sneak onto something in sort of mid-December or whatever. I don't know. Give Joseph Parker a call and jump on that card, because it wasn't a grueling fight or anything like that. Although you still need to account for the you know, the work that goes into the camp leading up to the fight, which is, you know, just as exhausting, even if you get out of the bout unscathed. But yeah, like considering also like MIQ questions and things like that, and various quarantines, like not just in New Zealand but all around the world, that would have to go into some of those. I don't think a fight in such a quick turnaround is really a possibility. But maybe, you know, February next year or something like that, he might be back in, because he's got a belt now. He's the WC Middle Eastern Heavyweight Champ, which is a brand new title, never existed before he won it. The only man to ever hold that title. He's held it for about 5 days now. So, you know, people will be lining up for that one. It's always nice if you have a belt, even if it's not a particularly, you know, prestigious bout. It's still something that can help you book new fights. So he's got that in his bag. He'll keep busy, I'm sure. Junior Farr is much more interesting because I think he's been quite frustrated throughout this year. He, you know, fought Joseph Parker in whatever was it, February or something like that, and just hasn't had anything since. I think he's probably coming to a similar place as some of the you know, some of those other city kickboxing dudes and some of the other boxing dudes like Joseph Parker, David Nika are both headed over to England for the, you know, lead into their next fights, and have like no guarantee they'll be able to get back into the country straight away afterwards. So they're basically like open-ended, traveling to, like, setting themselves up in England there. Junior Far's probably coming close to that, where he might have to go overseas if he wants to push this thing. But I think what's held him back to this point is that, like, well, you know, he does have a family, and he spoke quite a bit in the you know, spoke really well about around the Parker fight about, you know, having an autistic child and stuff like that. And these are definitely considerations for a guy like that, and hesitations for a guy like that in that scenario. But yeah, the other thing is there's this Justice Suni fight that people keep talking about. And it's been like there's been a couple months of negotiations there that just haven't seemed to, they've just dragged on for whatever reason. I don't know if this is something we need to blame Dean Lonergan for being on that side on the other, you know, the Justice Suni end. But just for whatever reason, probably COVID lockdowns were a big part of that, I would suspect as well. Whether that happens or not, I mean, that's an ideal fight for him, because it is a fight against a guy who's up and coming, who's pretty interesting fighter, where he wouldn't have to travel too far away. So it would be ideal. And I wonder if he's just been hanging out for that a little bit, and it's just been difficult to organize it, especially when there's only like one real possibility. It makes leverage a bit more difficult. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully that does get organized before the end of the year, though, because I do want to see that fight. And more than anything, I just want to see Junior Farr back in the ring, where he clearly deserves to be after an impressive outing against Joseph Parker, even if he did lose. So it's been a frustrating year for him, in line with, you know, a lot of that other CKB stuff. But hopefully he's also on that roller coaster heading back in the upwards direction now, and he can get something before the end of the year or early next year, and you know, keep himself busy and get another big W on the record.
I think it's a similar situation with Adesanya, because the Robert Whittaker fight won't happen this year, especially not the way New Zealand and Australia are. And that's probably, it's a good thing for Adesanya to go to be based in the USA, because he can just get far more quicker access to a UFC fight. And the thing with City Kickboxing is that all their fighters get on the same card, which is the same thing. Like, it's obviously a trend with their structure, where you had Ahio fighting on the Junior Farr card earlier this year as well. And if Adesanya is headlining a fight, you're going to see, Dan Hooker's fighting on the 30th of October. Riddell's fighting in December. Kai Kara France is fighting in December as well. So if Adesanya is headlining a card, that's when you're going to see the rest of those dudes, Shane Young, Carlos Ulberg, Blood Diamond, get on the on that card. It's just like, I'm fascinated by sitting kickboxing because they have established themselves as a trustworthy organization working, or a trustworthy team, even organization working with the UFC. Because all you hear around the UFC is fighters wanting more money. All you hear is like issues with how the UFC is structured, issues around getting the fights they want to have, being out leveraged in contract negotiations and just shit like that happening. None of that's happening with any city kickboxing fighters. And I think there's some stuff there happening outside the UFC where it's like these dudes are all pretty self-sufficient, whether it's their own businesses that they have, whether it's their own investment or their media work, because they've all got YouTube channels, they're all streaming, they're all making their own content. So they are self-sufficient outside of the UFC. So it's just an interesting thought to have, because I think a lot of sports fans, they hear the UFC, they hear niggle between like whoever the big fighter is, whether it's Francis Ngannou or John Jones or any of these dudes who have issues with the UFC. We don't hear about that with city kickboxing. And now we've got a situation where Dan Hooker's got a great relationship with the UFC, always has done, because he just steps up and fights whoever. But he's got some, fan favoritism. He's got some buzz behind him and around him. And now you've got city kickboxing moving to be closer to where the UFC is structured, is like Las Vegas. So at least getting the USA, you're closer to it, so you can be run more efficiently. I'm not sure how that applies to the boxing stuff, because you're dealing with so many different organizations and promoters and all that stuff, specifically with the city kickboxing crew, because they don't necessarily have the big network promotion relationships that Joseph Parker has. But it's just a really interesting thing to ponder, because there are, publicly headliney, it's all issues between UFC and their fighters. It's all pay dramas. It's all scheduling dramas, like organizing fight dramas. None of that really applies with city kickboxing. And I think city kickboxing has worked their way into a favorable relationship with the UFC.
Yeah, an interesting spin-off of that idea is like, two, because the first one is that we see that thing about like getting the teammates all on the same card. That's pretty, I think that's relatively regular in a lot of things. It's definitely notable when it's coming from a gym out of Auckland. It's something that Eddie Hearn, for example, is quite notorious for, is his an Anthony Joshua card will be just filled with matchroom fighters all the way down. And it's something that David Nika spoke about in going over to fight on the undercard of Parker versus Chisora, is that he was quite thankful to Eddie Hearn for like bending on that, because David Nika is not promoted by Eddie Hearn. Maybe he will be by the end of it, who knows, but he's not currently. So that is a little bit out of the ordinary that they managed to sort that one out. And by all accounts, Joseph Parker was like the major instigator for that. Like, he'd doing a solid for his lad after he did one for him and being his main sparring partner ahead of the Junior Far fight, even though Nika is someone who has I don't think he's been like a full-time CKB dude, but he's definitely trained with those guys. So, he's used some resources there. There was Eugene Behrman made a few jokes about it in some of the press conferences leading up to that fight. So that's a point to be made. The other point is that Himia Hio's fight, amongst the people sort of like talking about it and celebrating his performance there, was a fellow by the name of Lou DiBella, who happens to be the guy who uncoincidentally is in charge of Lou DiBella, I think, Entertainment or whatever it's called, who is Junior Far's promoter. I assume he's still Junior Far's promoter. He was definitely in the Parker Far times. So, you know, Hemi Aheo fights on the undercard of that as a gym teammate of Junior Far. And then all of a sudden, it seems quite likely now, based on that, if you know a promoter is talking him up, it probably means that promoter is representing him, which probably means that Hemi Aheo is also now a promotional teammate of Junior Far, which is a curious little development, and I think not a coincidence, and hopefully something that is able to be leveraged in the way that we see, you know, Adesanya bringing dudes along from his gym. Hopefully we're seeing similar things where like Junior Far and Hemi Aheo, neither of them have a major, you know, like celebrity of the way that Adesanya does, but hopefully there's some sort of like yo-yoing effect where they can bring each other up and along the way, and we see them fighting on similar cards, if only because like it's a lot easier to follow when it's just, you know, the one fight night and you send both of them at a time. Hopefully that's the case. We'll see how that goes though, because as I say, it's been a difficult one for Junior Far to actually get fights, and Hemi Aheo had to go over to the Middle East to get his next bout, but you know, nice convincing win hopefully sets him up for more in the future.
Dan Hooker's fighters in the UAE as well.
Mm.
And the Blackcaps are playing in the UAE. So it's all fucking happening in the UAE. Kiwi party. Let's go.
So we get Trent Bolt on one of those undercards next time. Throwing some left hooks or something. I don't think he'd probably be the first person you'd pick, though. I don't know who would be, actually. Daryl Mitchell would be a good slugger.
I quickly went to Glenn Phillips.
Yeah, you know, Glenn like, Phillips is a good bet.
The lockdown stuff started with 100 press-ups.
Mm.
Then now I've seen headlines 800 press-ups. But I also saw like some of the headlines were Crick Info based, so they were like slightly weird. But it was like Phillips does, you know, has been all about the gym doing 800 press-ups, and it's like, well, you know, gym and press-ups are kind of different. Like, yeah. He's all about doing press-ups in his room. Yeah, he's all about.
You don't need a gym membership to do body weight.
That's the beautiful thing about press-ups or pull-ups. You know, you don't need.
Exactly.
So fucking.
Sit up, it's like, burpees, star jumps, all of them.
It's like
you can do pretty well without paying for it.
I think it's like a 6 you hit, or like a runaway try you have, where it's like the yarn just gets longer and more funkier. I think 100 press-ups became 800 press-ups, and you know, if he's like the leading run scorer at the 2020 World Cup, it's going to be like
it'll be 1,000 plus.
Yeah, Glenn Phillips, 1,000 press-ups a day. What an amazing dude! This is how he hits a reverse sweep 6 off a Yorker. It would be a bit funny, but how do we get to that UAE party? It's a Kiwi party in the UAE. That's the that might be the episode title. Kiwi party in the UAE. Football Ferns not going to play in the UAE. Where are those games being played? Are they playing in Canada? Yes.
Yeah, I think one's in like Ottawa and Montreal, or could be I can't remember. But yeah, there's 2 different cities in Canada.
So they play on the 24th and the 27th, which are early next week. They've got a new coach, Yitka Klimkova. We've discussed their squads a bit. We've discussed the new coach a bit. I'm curious, just preparing for this series against Canada wildcard. There are 6 new players in the squad. You broke down the debutants on the previous variety show. You've kind of talked about all sorts of football in depth as well. So I just want to be specific here in asking, which of those players do you think might actually contribute to the starting team, if any of them are going to start? Like, is this squad stretching the depth where these debutants are going to have some 1, 2, 3, maybe however many of these players are going to debut? Or is it a bit of a situation where it's like, oh my god, there's 6 debutants, none of them are going to start, and one or two might come off the bench. You know how footballers, you can only have 3 subs and so on. So what's your vibe there with the debutants? Are any of them going to start? Who might they be? What's kind of happening there?
Well, I think you'll definitely see a fair few of them off the bench, and as friendly game, I expect that'll mean 5 or 6 substitutions allowed, non-competitive and all that. They make allowances. Maybe not in the starting lineup though, because I think you still have the bare bones in the squad of like, half the squad is very experienced still. Half the squad is very inexperienced. Half of a 22-player squad is your starting lineup. So you can still have, Aaron Naylor, 73 caps, CJ Bott, 27 caps, but an established starter at this point. Katie Bowen will be starting, 73 caps. Michaela Moore, 44. Ali Riley, 137. Betsy Hassett, 123. Rhea Percival, 153, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you're going to be able to set up pretty much, it's not quite at first strength. Abby Ersig's not there, Rebecca Stott's not there, but the midfield and defense and goalkeeper is going to be as close to that, recognizably so at least. Up front is where it gets a little bit interesting, and we don't know how Coach Klimkova is going to set things up. We don't know if she has a preferred formation. She's spoken a little bit about things. Different to Tom Samani would, he'd cycle through a few different options. He'd try to have the team ready to be able to play a back 3 or a back 4. And so he could make adjustments even at halftime or something within games like that. We saw that at the Olympics even. So he was someone who was trying to be a little more, I don't know if tactical flexibility is the right word, because it's not really flexible within the system they play. It's just that they have multiple systems. Klimkova seems to be someone who wants a set system and be this is how we play, so players can learn to adapt. And if you need to bring someone in, you're not having to shake things up drastically because they know what the role entails and whatever, which, I mean, I don't think there's a right or a wrong way, but I do, if you've tried it one way, it's worth trying the next way the next time, you know what I mean? So I can see the logic of that. So I don't know what the front line is going to look like. Is it going to be a front 3? Is it going to be just a front 1 with deeper wingers who are expected to be a little more defensive? Would you play a bit hard to play back 3 when you really only got one centre back in the whole squad? But I don't know. But having said that, looking at the attacking options in this group, just players who would conceivably play, not even counting attacking midfielders, but just players who would conceivably play, because Hannah Wilkinson's been the holding striker, the target woman up front for the last year or two, and would have been further back, but for injuries. She's a very experienced player. I think she's a Centurion now at this point. So she was definitely Samani's first choice striker. She's obviously not here because she plays for Melbourne City now. So she's, unavailable as with all the other players based in New Zealand, Australia. So you've got Emma Ralston's probably the favorite to start there. She's played 6 games. Ava Collins, Jackie Hand, Maggie Jenkins might all play in the front line. Hand and Jenkins especially probably a little more likely out wide if that's the case. But they're all uncapped players from, except Jenkins has actually played 1 cap. She debuted as a 16-year-old about 4 years ago and is back in the team now after these years. Gabby Rennie's another possibility. She debuted at the Olympics, so she's only played 3 times. Another one who's at university, Sam Tafadu as well, who's also university, and then Rosie White, who is the odd one out here because she's played 109 times, scored 24 goals for her country. She's clearly the most experienced striker in the group. However, is coming off an illness issue, which has kept her out for about the last 4 months. She has not yet played again for her club. And leading into playoff time, I'm not too confident that she will, other than maybe a cameo off the bench, because that's a deep team that OL Reign have, thanks to their connections with OL, Olympique Lyon in France, who have been the dominant team up until the last 12 months. Barcelona has taken over as the dominant team in Europe now, but still, Lyon won 8 Champions Leagues in a row before that, or something mental. So Rosie White's got her work cut out, completely short of match fitness in order to actually play for a club team. The Ferns duty probably comes at a nice time for her. Having said that, you can't expect like major things from someone who hasn't played for 4 or 5 months. So the one player with any real international experience in the front line is got no match fitness right now, and the others are just like 6 caps or fewer, about 3 of them with no caps whatsoever. So definitely, if we're going to see like some of those inexperienced players starting, it's those ones I just listed there. It's the strikers, it's the wide forwards. Those are the areas where like the depth disappeared very quickly when we took away the A-League women's players. And this is where we are. We've got to try like figure out the rest. Gabirini was a bolter of a similar level at the Olympics though, and she scored on debut and looked very good playing off the bench in all 3 of those games. So that's the blueprint. Hopefully, that's the benchmark. I also think got to keep in mind as well, we're playing Canada. The reason Canada are hosting these games is because they're on like a victory tour from having won the Olympics. So it might not matter who plays up front. Like it might just be a case of you get to play up front, you run around a whole lot, you don't touch the ball because Canada are quite good. That might be the situation, but it's all a learning curve. It's all about like getting the coach. Really, the most important thing is the coach is the debutant, really, and how is that going to look? What sort of shape she going to set up? What tactics are we going to see? And from what she said, it sounds like she wants to have a distinct style, in which case what we see will actually be quite influential in what we see from the Ferns and future tours building forward.
I reckon the celebration tour for Canada makes this fucking mandatory fuck Canada. Like surely win surely win one of these games and just be like, yeah, well, that was the last Olympics. Like, what are you doing? Like, still yarning about your like.
That's where you get that pillowcase from the start back out and say, all right, like after you beat Canada 2 times, like walk around, okay, give us your gold medals. They're ours now. We've earned them.
I mean, rightly or wrongly, no one really gives a shit about the Olympics here in the back end of October. Like, everything. It just seemed that's the way though. Like, it's not. It's kind of sad, but there is that hangover where it's like, okay, Olympics finished, and then the whole sports world just started up. Like you had all the Olympic athletes who compete, the NBA players or Lydia Ko in the golf next weekend. Not NBA players, but like Lydia Ko, she's straight back in. Abby Erceg, straight back in. It's like, that's just the way of the world. But that is strictly shout out to the Olympians. Shout out to all of them, especially the amateur ones who like win medals, compete at a high level. But if you're Canada and you're still celebrating your like shit, well, fuck, like football Ferns got to upset the apple cart there for sure. So because the vibe I get is that the core of the white football Ferns is still there. Like, and I'm talking core, but these players all like, if you're looking at a football formation, these players actually are the core. It's not just like, this is the core of our squad. So when you look at a rugby league spine or, a rugby union, what's your type 5 type of stuff, or just whatever it is. If you look at the formation, who are your core players? Well, you got some defenders. You got Michaela Moore. You got Ellie Riley. You got Rhea Percival. You got those characters. You got Naylor in goal. You're going to have, Katie Bowen probably in the, center midfield. Betsy Hass is going to be in the midfield. Yeah. Like, it's like that. There's the core element of this team where, basic football Ferns stuff. Like, I think this is football Ferns 101, which is kind of good way to think of it. I reckon is it's kind of where the All Whites were, because now we're seeing the All Whites start to come in with a bit of funky attack. You got Joe Bell threading the needle. You got some attacking impetus. You got guys wanting to go one-on-one. You got guys wanting to do passing combinations. You got a good finisher, so that gives you some confidence. And he's a finisher who's scored goals against the best in the world. So it's just a different kind of vibe to the quintessential All Whites vibe that we knew and loved, past tense. Whereas I think for the football Ferns, we're kind of in that space where we know the football Ferns are going to be solid. Like, they're going to be hard to break down on a good day. They're going to, like, not going to give you too many opportunities. They're going to stay in the contest and hopefully get a plucky goal type of thing. And I think that core is strong enough to where you come up against the best teams in the world on a good day, coming up against the Canada on their celebration tour, you can still concede 1 goal, concede 2 goals, and give yourself a chance at this game. I think we're both in agreement, though, that they don't quite have the zip, the pizzazz, the panache going forward that actually changes the contest. Where you're a team trying to hang in the game, now you're taking the game to the opponent and you're saying, fuck your Canada farewell celebration tour. We're going to score goals against you. Maybe that actually plays into the Football Ferns' hands here, because some of these younger players, you know, maybe Rosie White is just frothing to score a goal. Like, she is just desperate to score a goal and she wants to dribble around 2 players and bang it in top bin, as they say. Or maybe one of these younger players, are these the strikers? Ava Collins, Jackie Hand, Jenkins.
Yeah, Maggie Jenkins, Gabby Rennie, Sam Tafadu, all these. Yep.
Yeah, so maybe one of those players is just feeling good, confidence, Football Ferns debut, you know, just a happy to be here moment. But we've seen with the younger crew in all sports, very confident, very skillful, and they're not going to be shying away from the Canada celebration tour. So am I correct in my assessment there? Like, I think I'm just coming from a casual Kiwi sports fan perspective, where you got the Football Ferns basics, solid international core, have been lacking some pizzazz going forward. Perhaps the younger wave in that striking department, attacking department, could change that. And we'll see, because maybe also Klimkova changes that, as you said.
Yeah, I know. I reckon that's pretty spot on. I think that there has been definitely a problem with the Ferns. It's like, I mean, even Hannah Wilkinson, who is clearly the best striker that New Zealand have had for the last several years, notwithstanding that she's had a couple injuries in that time as well, has kept her out and had a pretty hold at the last World Cup. She was full fitness by the Olympics. It's still a similar thing where, like, she's very good at the physical stuff and holding the ball up and doing a lot of what Chris Wood does for the All Whites and for Burnley and whatever. She can do a lot of that stuff, but she doesn't have the necessarily like the high ratio of goals. She does score goals. She's a goal scorer, but she doesn't have the the high conversion rate, the one golden chance and it's buried and like no dramas kind of thing. And that's just been a problem exacerbated as well by the fact that if you're a deep team, that striker has more pressure on them to do that, which makes it harder for them because they've got less help around them. I think we saw some signs at the Olympics of a team that was trying to play a little bit more footy, like trying to be a bit more ambitious in possession, not just like get the ball, pump it up the line, hit the channels. Seeing that was like, well, we can string a few passes together in midfield. We got good like technicians there. Rhea Percival is like, she does that role for Spurs as a sort of holding midfielder who can push forward and advance the ball. She's sort of really blossomed as a midfielder in the last few years because she was always, like mostly as a fullback in the early days for the Ferns. I think Katie Bowen, by the sounds of it, is going to be stuck in centre back, which is not her regular position. She would rather be in midfield with Percival, but needs must, and they don't really have any, like a lot of their experienced centre backs are missing at the moment. But Daisy Cleverley's a good player on the ball. Olivia Chance is a fantastic player on the ball, as she's shown for Celtic at the moment in recent games. Like, they've got players who can do that kind of thing, and then it's just a matter of once you can do that, you need that contribution up front to be able to not only continue like good movement and good hold up play and linking up between like passes in the attacking third, linking up between players, but also taking chances, but also variety to the way they play as well. And I think when Gabby Rennie was first picked for the Footy Ferns for that Olympic squad as a bolter, I remember saying then, like before, like I wrote it at the time in my squad recap thing, that she's yes, she's probably been picked a year or two earlier than she would ordinarily have because of the team's just lack of depth in that area. But she's the exact right type of player that the Ferns need to, have been desperate to develop. And so if you need to push that type of player forward, like that's the one to pick. It's the player who fits the need that you have. Someone who is, quick at getting in behind, good movement, but also strong on the ball, tidy technique, and a good finisher. And she's shown a lot of that, like especially her last season for Canterbury in the National League last year was really good. I think she was the top scorer overall. Didn't get the Golden Boot because she scored a few of her goals in the final, which didn't count towards it. The Golden Boot was like a regular season award or whatever, but doesn't matter. Regular goal scorer that she is. Like that's exactly the kind of player, a fully formed number 9 that the Ferns haven't really had. So someone like that getting an opportunity was great. And she took, she scored on debut against Australia. And then the best case scenario, whether we see that or not, but the best case scenario is that other players can, like, I think Jenkins is a good bet. Tafaro is someone who can hold the ball up really nicely as well. And I haven't mentioned her because she's more of a midfielder, but Aniela Jensen as well is someone who can do probably more on that like Olivia Chance kind of attacking midfielder, picking passes and stuff like that. That's exciting to see. And then also probably worth mentioning, a number of the players that have been signed by the Wellington Phoenix women's team recently as well are players who can fit similar kind of like different types of players than what the country has been developing in the past. And hopefully that does flow through into the national team by the time of the 2023 World Cup in the way that we seem to be seeing with the All Whites. Because as you say, like the All Whites were in this position not so long ago either, where they had a lot of, they did have Chris Wood. That's a difference, is that Ferns haven't had someone like that. But other than that, a lot of good, sturdy pros who maybe were all a little bit, especially in midfield, all a little bit too similar. And now you've got players like, Joe Bell, who's just like a perfect number 8. He can do a little bit of everything. Marko Stamenic, who can be similar areas to what I was just saying about Bell, but in a different way. Like Sarpreet Singh, who's a string puller, a little bit further. Like there's it's not just that there's really good players coming through. There are also players that aren't the type of players who have been developed in the past. So yeah, hopefully we're seeing that from the Ferns. Hopefully we're seeing a wave that leads to that kind of the same effect we've seen with the All Whites, because it's definitely possible, and it's definitely it's definitely hopeful as well. It's definitely what we want to see. It's just a matter of I don't know, wait and see is the issue with all of these things. Is we don't also I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, you know what I mean, and saying that this is what is going to be. This is the best case scenario, is that we're seeing the start of a wave like that. It might not be, but we can be optimistic.
We're somewhat optimistic that Auckland and Northern Districts might play a Plunket Shield game this year. To finish this year. Plunket Shield starts on Saturday. We have Wellington versus Otago in Wellington, and then you've got Canterbury versus Central Districts in Christchurch. That CD team won't feature Ross Taylor, Laturu, or Ajaz Patel, I think, who are stuck in COVID-ravaged regions, struggling it tough in Aotearoa. They can't get away. They can't escape. What are they going to do? Just chill out. So you won't have Ross Taylor in Christchurch. You won't have Ajaz Patel. So it's a bit of a hit to the funk. Like if you're a Canterbury cricket fan, well, there's still a shitload of Blackcaps going to play, I reckon. So, but I was really interested in Ross Taylor, and you've expressed your appreciation for Ajaz Patel's spin bowling. Apparently,
he's hovering over my shoulder there, Ajaz Patel.
It's a rip snorter of a delivery there. That's a lot of spin. Like that's
it is actually, yeah.
It's exactly what you want to do as a lefty tweaker.
Lovely.
So you won't have Ajaz Patel, and the 2 games played, I don't know who the best spinner will be in those 2 games. Stags, Canterbury, Volts, Wellington, Firebirds. If Ajaz Patel's not playing, I don't like. This is the thing about Kiwi cricket, just lacking a bit of spin bowling. Maybe it's Rachin Ravindra. Who knows? But
counterpoint is, will a spinner even bowl any overs in the first round of the Plunket Shield 2 months before the end of the year? It's not always a given.
Definitely not. The Otago Wellington game, you've got Nathan Smith, who moved from Otago to play for Wellington. So he plays his old team first up, which is going to be fun. one would expect Finn Allen's going to play for Wellington as well. This has all been recorded prior to the squads being announced and so on, so we don't really know. The Taylor and Ajaz Patel stuff was in the news, so that's how I knew that one. Rajan Ravindra might play for Wellington as well. Finn Allen's probably going to open. Obviously, fascinating to see what Finn Allen does in the Plunket Shield. Otago, I'm kind of thinking about Jacob Duffy there and just what he can do. Obviously, you alluded to the conditions at this time of year. Perfect Jacob Duffy conditions. Any other discussion points, key points there in that Wellington versus Otago game wildcard from your end?
It's probably a game that doesn't have a whole lot of those. Expect Wellington will be well favored. And then it's just a matter of like, I don't know, because who are they missing from the Black? Like Devon Conway obviously isn't there, but you said Ravindra will be back, won't he? So, and Finn Allen and guys like that. I mean, it's an interesting time of the year for a variety. Like, I don't know if anyone else has people who are stuck in Hamilton or Auckland as well that, you know, live there during the year for work or whatever, and maybe can't, like in the same way that Ross Taylor lives in Hamilton, can't get away for this round. Like, I don't know if other teams are going to, like, I suspect it might be one of the, I don't know, you know, it might even be a football Fernsy type situation where just a few players are unavailable we might get to see in the first round or so. And hopefully it's only the first round or two that are affected, but I am honestly skeptical about how soon Auckland can feature in the Plunket Shield, if at all. It sounds like they're about to can the National League football stuff for that reason. They might still play some games like they're doing here with other teams from outside of Auckland and Waikato, but it won't be the actual tournament. Yeah, I suspect it might be one of those things where it's like the first round we might get a few bolters, you know, it might be a few exciting players to get a look at that we wouldn't ordinarily have a glimpse at. Is what's his name? Georgeson, is he hovering around for Wellington?
I'd assume so. Obviously, no idea who's actually hovering around anywhere, but
we don't know specifically.
I would imagine Luke Georgeson's there. Luke Georgeson has opened the batting and the bowling in some form of semi-professional cricket before, which is a good sign. Young lad, 23, 24 years old for Wellington Firebirds. So I think that's the Wellington thing I'm thinking about is Finn Allen, Rajan Ravindra, Luke Georgeson, Ben Sears. All four of them have like a decent case to be among the best young cricketers in Aotearoa. I think it's pretty. Sears was selected for that Bangladesh tour, I think. So I think it's like you've got him, Allen, and Ravindra, who have all been in and around the Blackcaps. And then you've got Luke Georgeson, who spent the winter playing in Ireland. So yeah, I think that's the Wellington thing, is just that young group and seeing how they progress, because you're looking, they're all at different stages of their development as well. Like Finn Allen and Rajan Ravindra are kind of, can they sustain the start of their careers as teams get more familiar with them? Ben Sears is still trying to burst through, and Luke Georgeson is the unknown quantity. So that's a high concentration of high quality young cricketers there for the Wellington Firebirds. Otago is, you've got the Jacob Duffy thing. Nick Kelly was third in Plunket Shield runs last summer, 6 half centuries. Hamish Rutherford was second in Plunket Shield runs last summer. So Otago had 2 of the top 3 run scorers in the Plunket Shield last summer. Jacob Duffy was 5th in wickets, and I think the season before he was the leading wicket taker. So you've got some funk there, but I think just Otago is just the Otago journey might be a little different in the sense that they're just trying to maintain a high level of performance coming off a weird period. They do have a new coach. I think Dion Ibrahim is their new coach. So it's kind of Otago Volts are just starting a new cycle, I believe, and being competitive against a strong Wellington team. That's kind of the Otago angle. They don't have as many Blackcaps contenders. Jacob Duffy's the main one. You can like get into the nooks and crannies and might be like, oh, can Hamish Rutherford have a resurgent run this late in his career, that kind of thing. But just what do you need to know about Otago Volts to start the Plunket Shield? I believe they are in a position where they just need solid performances, get some buzz, win some games, get into the mix again of domestic cricket after a pretty tumultuous couple of years. They just need to build. Again, Southland Sport, Otago Rugby League, Southland Rugby League, whatever it is. I think deep down in the deep south, they're just trying to build on, and find yourself in a better position. Canterbury versus CD. Canterbury, you'd expect will have Henry Nichols, Tom Latham, Matt Henry. CD is going to have Will Young. Probably Blair Tickner's going to be there. Probably Doug Bracewell's going to be there. Plenty of good cricketers involved. The thing about Canterbury Wildcard is their seam attack, because their seam attack was disgusting last summer. Will Williams, leading wicket taker. Fraser Sheet was third, and Fraser Sheet has a fantastic first-class bowling record. As I pull it up, averages 22, 17 games, 63 wickets, average of 22. And he finished third in Plunket Shield wickets this summer. And I think every summer that he's played of domestic cricket, I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago, he has improved summer on summer on summer. So keep an eye on Fraser Sheet. Canterbury, they've got someone like Sean Davey, who bowls pretty quick as well. So plenty of talent there. CD.
Don't forget Ed Nuttall as well.
Ed Nuttall's going to be whipping his...
Craig McMillan said last summer was the fastest guy in domestic cricket, which I think is probably a bit of the old Cantabrian one-eyed bias, but he is pretty zippy, Ed Nuttall. Lefty too.
See, off the top of my head, I reckon with, again, like, I don't walk around with a speed gun in my pocket, so it's one of those things you never know. But I reckon Sean Davey might give him a run just in that Canterbury setup. So I'm not sure the validity, maybe. But Craig, Mac is around the Canterbury team a lot more than I am. So big it up to the bro Macca. And what tickles your fancy about Canterbury versus Central Districts? No batsman, sorry to interrupt, but no batsman for Central Districts had in the top 10 last summer. No batsman in the top 10. They had Blair Tickner, fourth in wickets, and I believe it's Ryan Toole. He was seventh.
Ray Toole, yeah.
Ray Toole. Raymond Toole, big lefty, I believe. He was, right there as well. Seth Rance battling away. Canterbury versus CD. It's a lot of talent on display there in Christchurch. So if you're a cricket fan in the Canterbury region, you'll be watching some high quality cricket between Canterbury and Central Districts.
Yeah, and CD have obviously lost George Worker as well, moved to Auckland, so that does leave them potentially, batting lineup a little bit vulnerable against the best seam bowling attack in the Plunket Shield last season, which is
one batsman, mate. It's still got Greg Hay, Will Young, Brad Schmullian, couple whoever else. It's one of the most it's one of the most stacked batted cricket teams I've seen. George Worker's not living a match.
No, he's not the be all and end all, but it's still a it's already a tough task going up against Canterbury. Especially at this time of year as well. Like, that's always the thing with the Plunket Shield, is like before Christmas, it's just a seamer's paradise. And if you've got a killer seam attack, then you're going to be expected to win games, which is probably Otago's one big hope there as well against a strong Wellington team, is that they do have, like, you mentioned Duffy, and I think it was Michael Ray's normally up near the top of the wicket takers as well, isn't he? So, chip away those early wickets. I dare I say it, I think in both these games, toss might be crucial.
Michael Rippon might have a bowl for Otago as well. Not in the Netherlands T20 team. I think he's. How weird is that? You got Kiwi dudes who play for Netherlands, and then you've got other dudes from other countries who come to New Zealand who are eligible for any other country. So Michael Rippon, he's played for Netherlands, and he comes to New Zealand to try to play for New Zealand. Well, we've got New Zealanders who want to play for Netherlands. It's not good or bad. It's just, it is what it is. And Michael Rippon's a fantastic cricketer, lefty leggies, has a good bat as well.
I don't think he's a million miles away from the Blackcaps team either. If if Todd Astle, who's like 35 or something and is already retired from red ball cricket, if he retires from white ball cricket in the next couple of years, I think Rippon's probably he's probably the next man up, and in order to take that kind of like backup spinning all rounder sort of role. I mean, there might be a couple other candidates that I'm not thinking of, but certainly someone is like, in terms of someone who can bowl some tidy wrist spin and also give the ball a tonk with the bat, he's up there. I think he has been involved in like winter squads and camps and stuff as well. So he's on the pathway. Maybe that's why he's not at the World T20s.
Yeah, and that's how you know that he's like wanting to play for New Zealand, because he's taken those steps. And there is that lack of like fantastic young versions of Glenn Phillips bowling spin and being the leading spinner in the T20 World Cup. So I think there is, like, if you are a spinner and you are in the latter stages of your career, as we've already seen with Will Somerville, I think we might see it with Louis Dalport at some stage moving forward, or Michael Rippon. If you're a spinner, don't give up hope, because there is like a bit of a gap in the high quality young spinner department that I think can be. I actually believe if you're a spinner, you want to be more experienced anyway. You got better knowledge of your game. Ajaz Patel's an example of this. You've perfected your art or many repetitions in New Zealand domestic cricket, then you're better equipped to move up to international cricket, as opposed to chucking young spinners into international cricket and saying, like, figure it out here. Don't know if that is the best recipe.
Wrist spinners absolutely kill it in 2020s as well, if you like check the numbers on those.
So we got all Plunket Shield cricket starts on Saturday, 10:30 Saturday, Wellington versus Otago in Wellington, 10:30 Saturday, Canterbury versus CD in Christchurch. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens there. And it is the start of the cricket season, cricket summer. They'll be followed by some Blackcaps T20 cricket, followed by some women's cricket, followed by plenty of other Kiwi sporting happenings. We'll finish there. Cowabunga. Cheer. Times 17. Lots of cheers. Stay beautiful. Kia kaha. Māori ora.